Hashem Hashem Naaseh v'Natzliach, Shiur Torah, Bruchim Habayim. We are back here continuing our series of the Igeret Agra, the extraordinary letter by the Gaon Vilna to his family, to us. We've been learning this for the last year or so, line by line, and teachings after teachings, learning endlessly about how much a person could really change if they really wanted to apply themselves. B'ezrat Hashem, tonight's shiur will be for Ilui Nishmat Elmira Meira Abramova, and also for Refuah Shlema for Rabbanit Levana Bat Sarah, Rav Ephraim Ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah Bat Anat, Avi Mori David Ben Esriya, Imi Morati Doris Bat Jora, and also for the Atzlacha Rabbah for Marsha Bat Julie, Ayla Bat Marsha, Samuel Ben Marsha, Cephas Ben Marsha, Alexander Ben Marsha, Louis Ben Marsha, and all of Am Yisrael and all the righteous Noahides that continue to contribute in different ways, whether it's their time, their money, their abilities, and for all of you that continue to contribute by simply watching and learning with us and getting closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The reminder for everyone that is watching this on Facebook, if you have the ability, and you're interested in avoiding all Yetzer Hara, such as comments and all types of other things, the best way to watch the shiurim are either on our Be'ezrat Hashem app, which is free. You could download it on any app store, whether on Google or on iOS, on Apple. Or you could, if you want to watch it on the desktop, just go to bh.live. B is in Be'ezrat, H is in Hashem, .live. Over there you'll be able to watch the shiurim live. Now, some of you have asked me in regards to the questions that we have on the Stump the Rabbi, which is Be'ezrat Hashem is scheduled for tomorrow night. The questions typically come from the Facebook crowd, and obviously when we have the live event once a month, Be'ezrat Hashem, we have it. The questions come from the people that are there. I don't recommend anyone to sign up to Facebook just for the sake of sending questions. If you have an extremely necessary question and you think it's something that could help others as well, and you want to send me the question before the shiur, suggest just send me a WhatsApp message with the question, and Be'ezrat Hashem, I'll try to include that as well, which I've done many times in the past. But again, it all depends on the shiur, on the question, and everything else. But if you have a question, you can always send it via WhatsApp. That's the best way to send it. So with that being said, it's always a reminder for people to continue to share the shiurim with as many people as they can, not only if you're watching it live, but also if you're watching this 10 years from now. Share this shiur. Somebody else may benefit out of this shiur. You never know. You could potentially be saving a life. There's countless people that watch the shiurim and tell me that they found out about the shiurim from somebody that they've never heard of, but this appeared on their message board or somewhere else, and since then they started listening to shiurim and it changed their life in many positive ways. So Baruch Hashem, those of you that are sharing are doing the smartest thing, because it's literally saving lives with a button. So with that being said, we have the Gaon Vilna is really getting to the end of the letter at this point. We've covered a lot of ground, some things that were unheard of by many, such as the judgment on people that simply waste their time by just chatting with their friends about nonsense, whether it be sports or politics or all types of things that don't necessarily apply or are necessary for their life, or it's people that obviously say Lashon Hara. The Gaon Vilna warned us severely about that. Of course, he also warned us about sending our kids to the right educators. Unfortunately, today, the Yetzer Hara is dancing and having a party in all communities, whether Jews or Gentiles alike, where people are scared at times to send their kids to get an education. If they're not scared, there's something wrong with them. If they are scared, unfortunately, there's nothing wrong with them. Why? Because if you look at what's going on in the education world today, it's literally a place of disaster, one after another. And to have the merit to have a good teacher, a good rabbi, that's a rabbanit, that's going to teach your son or daughter respectively, is really a gift of all gifts. This is part of the reason why I always tell parents that if you have the ability, if you have the ability to pay full tuition, and you know that your kids are getting a good education at their yeshiva, pay full tuition even if they offer you a discount. And in fact, if you could give more, you should give more. Why? Because good teachers are very hard to find. What do you have to compete with? You have the public school that teaches kids that the boy can be a girl and the girl can be a boy, and they have homosexual teachers that are having the kids sit on their lap, and then they're surprised that there is pedophilia running rampant in different schools. But unfortunately, I wish this would only be in the non-Jewish schools and not in the Jewish schools. And unfortunately, it is. You do find these cases of pedophilia in Jewish schools as well. Just last week, Shem Yishmor V'Yatzil, there was a so-called melamed, a special melamed at different schools, a whole group of schools in Eretz Yisrael, hire this specific melamed, this Rasha Merusha, Yimach Shemo V'Zichro, to go and teach little kids Hebrew, to teach them the language as kids. The 5 years old, 6 years old, they're learning how to read, and they have this. Not every school can hire a full-time teacher, so they have this melamed to work with the kids. And this happened to be one of the schools, happened to be next to Rabbi Ephraim's old house. Many of the kids started acting strange over the last several months. Parents started asking questions without really getting much answers. They walked in one day on the melamed with having a kid in there, a mattress on the floor in his office, and an axe in his hand. An axe in his hand, threatening the boy that if he tells people what he did to him, that he would surely use this axe. And these poor parents literally almost had a heart attack. You would think, you go to the police, they're going to help you. They went to the police said, listen, I don't have an open case here, so I'll just I'll note it. Yeah, but the guy doesn't even deny that he's a pedophile. He doesn't deny. And you look at all of the other offices they looked into, there was a whole investigation done by the news, and the guy doesn't even deny that he's a pedophile. Still, the police does not care so much. Why? Because the Satan is running. The Satan is running the show, and in many of these places, because of our many sins, Hashem Yishmor, because of our many sins. So again, it's you don't have much certainty. You don't have much certainty anywhere other than literally tears to a Kadosh Baruch Hu to make sure that the teachers that are teaching your kids are good teachers. They're going to teach them the truth. They're going to teach them the right things. And B'ezrat Hashem, your kids will arrive home, in better shape than they left. Today, it's unfortunately a disaster out there. But nonetheless, we all have to continue crying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to open up the different gates that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will have mercy on all of our children, mercy on all of Am Yisrael's children, mercy on the world's children, that will have at least the ability to learn normal things and not to learn things that are the opposite of what their purpose is in this world. So of course, the Gaon of Vilna spoke about this already a couple of 100 years ago, how you have to make sure to send your kids to have the right education, and he specifies that for education of the kids, spend extra money to make sure that they have the best rabbi. Privately teach the kids if possible. Why? Because if you're not going to spend money on educating your kids, and instead you're going to save that money to buy yourself a house, or you're going to save that money to get yourself a fancy car or a watch, unfortunately, their blood is on your hands. And unfortunately, this is one of the things that you see sometimes, where parents are more careful when they buy a house than they are careful when they choose a yeshiva. Or they're more careful when they're buying a car than they're careful about the who's teaching their kids. It's very important for a parent to be involved in the education of the kids, to make sure that you know what the kids are learning. Now, of course, if the parent is not learning, then that kid is literally in a Kadosh Baruch Hu's hand, and you only have a prayer left to hope that kid has enough merits that he doesn't fall in the hands of any of these predators, whether spiritual, physical, or both. So this is one of the things that the Gaon of Vilna was already concerned about over 200 years ago. Aside from that, we obviously have learned how it's important for a person to learn Torah, to make time for learning Torah, but not just Torah as far as the halachot, but also Torah when it comes to the midot, to learn musar in order to help ourselves become better quality people. If you see yourself becoming angrier, becoming stingier, becoming more arrogant, becoming more snobby, as a result of you learning Torah, then you, my dear friend, are not learning Torah. You're learning the Satan's Torah. You're not learning HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Torah. Why? Because the Torah is supposed to soften your character. If all of a sudden, as a result of you learning Torah, you start looking down at people, you're looking at only the flaws of everybody else and the praises of yourself, you, my dear friend, have a very, very serious problem. The Satan is your teacher, not HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why? The HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Torah is supposed to soften the character and make the person continuously better. Now, of course, no one's going to become a tzaddik overnight. No one's going to become a tzaddikah overnight. It takes time. But sometimes you see that there are certain people that they only focus on their successes and everybody else's failures. Make sure you're not one of those people. Why? Because if a person tends to look at everybody else's failures, their road to success is non-existent. And what ends up happening is that the sins become greater and greater because they stop paying attention. They simply think that as a result of them going to synagogue, praying, learning, they think that just as a result of that, automatically everything that they do is kadosh. And it's not necessarily the case. Hence the reason why the Gaon Vilna is warning his righteous family. He's not warning secular people or newly religious people or converts. He is warning his own family, righteous people, tzaddikim, of things that we ourselves are sometimes not careful about. Next, he goes into this letter in regards to the honor of his wife and his mother. This is what he says. We're only going to focus on the first couple of lines, but this is what he says. וגם באתי לבקש מאשתי שתכבד את אמי כמו שכתוב בתורה, ובפרט לאלמנה, שעוון פלילי מאוד לצערה אפילו בתנועה קלה, וגם לאמי ביקשתי שיהיה שלום בין שניכם, ואישה את רעותה תשמח בדברים טובים, כי זה מצווה גדולה לכל אדם, ושואלים לאדם בשעת הדין, המלכת את חברך בנחת רוח, הרי צריך שימליכהו בנחת, ובזה רוב התורה לשמח אדם. Translation: I also come to ask my wife to honor my mother, as the Torah dictates, especially as she is a widow, to whom it is a grave sin to cause pain, even with the slightest gesture. Also to you, my mother, my request is that peace should reign between the two of you, and that each woman should strive to gladden the other with good words. For this is a great mitzvah incumbent upon everyone, as we find in Atzar Midrashim, when a man is judged, he will be asked, did you make your fellow a king over you? We see that one must make his friend his king graciously. In fact, the majority of the Torah is focused to bring joy to mankind. Atkan is the paragraph. We're only going to focus on the first couple of lines when it comes to the honor of the in-laws. This is one of the things that the Gemara in Masechet Sotah, page 49b, says is one of the things that will change. One of the things that will change before Mashiach comes in a negative way, where throughout all of history, it was known that the mother-in-law was like a second mother, literally a second mother, across all of mankind. And the father-in-law was like a second father, across all of mankind. But this is one of the things that has changed and has deteriorated drastically, including Am Yisrael, where as we get closer and closer to Mashiach, we see that the Gemara says that the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law are going to be enemies. And unfortunately, I've witnessed several of these stories where you have mother-in-laws or daughter-in-laws come and ask for help because there is a huge brawl between the two of them. Sometimes it even gets physical. And unfortunately, this type of stuff ends up breaking up a lot of marriages. The same obviously goes with father-in-laws that pretend like they are more than a simple human being. I've had stories that I've dealt with, unfortunately, that people had to suffer through, but nonetheless, Baruch Hashem, in many cases, good things came out of them. But the reality is that sometimes these types of stories do not have a solution, because one of the parties is not really looking for a solution, but rather to just simply put their foot down and tell the whole world what to do. So I had one time where a young man told me that he was already dating a girl while he was a Baal Tshuva, and he wants to marry her. And she was a good girl. She was religious, and he was religious, and they became much more religious together, Baruch Hashem. And she was part of the family already for a couple of years. Finally, he decides that he wants to marry her. But now that he's becoming much more religious, they want to get married. And everybody's very happy because everyone in the family already knew her. One day, the girl didn't appreciate one of the comments that one of his brothers made in one of the meals. And she rebuked him in a decent way. Nothing, I've heard the details of it many times. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary. She simply didn't appreciate something that he said. And she said, I don't like what you said. That's it. It wasn't like a yelling, screaming, throw a plate at him or anything. Simply didn't appreciate it. The father who witnessed this lost his mind. Lost his mind to the point where at that point he judged. He is the judge and the jury that's it. My son is forbidden from marrying you. Forbidden. If he marries you, he's excommunicated from the family. And literally this whole thing delayed the marriage by almost a year. Constant crying and debating, and I'm sorry for things I didn't even do, and I'm sorry for things you think I did, and all types of, nothing would work. This guy was something unbelievable. And I asked the guy, does your father keep Shabbat? He goes, no, Rabbi, my father's a rabbi. I said, excuse me? He said, yeah, my father's Talmid Chacham, he's a rabbi. I said, your father's a rabbi and he's acting this way to this young girl? What's going on here? He says, I don't know. I can't explain to you. Everything else, he's a genius. With something here, got Yetzirah. Long story short, I guided the young man and his wife to follow what the halacha is in Shulchan Aruch, which Be'ezrat Hashem we'll get to later on tonight, which is that he's not allowed to listen to his father in regards to not marrying this girl, proceed with the marriage, and Be'ezrat Hashem you'll have only bracha, and Baruch Hashem that's exactly what happened. They only have bracha, Baruch Hashem they have a family now, and eventually the father, after literally a few years, I think it was like 3 years, he finally caved in. I think it was after one of the baby came into the world. Usually that's when peace starts being made, when the people start seeing grandkids, that they have to choose whether they're going to be part of their life or not. But unfortunately, this is not always the case. I've had situations where literally one of the in-laws was actively trying to break up the marriage. And at times, they've succeeded in breaking up marriages. Why? They don't like something about the husband, or they don't like something about the wife, or whatever it is, and they actively try to break up the marriage. And unfortunately, sometimes they do succeed, much more times than you can imagine. So the issue that we're talking about today is something that is pertinent in everybody's life, because there are countless couples out there that may have parnasah. They may have the basics that they need, but they do not have shlom bayit. Not because there's a problem between the husband and his wife, but rather because there's a problem with the in-laws. There's a problem with the in-laws, or vice versa. There is parents, everything that they need, they have, their kids, everything is good, but they still feel like they're missing everything. Just like, Lehavdil, you have Haman. Had everything but nothing at the same time. Why? Because Mordechai the Jew would not bow to him. So some parents, unfortunately, are in a similar shape where they have everything and nothing at the same time. Why? One of their sons married some girl that they don't approve of. And sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes the girl is a bad girl, or the boy is a bad boy, and sometimes simply the parents are bad. So it's important to know where we stand, because you never want to be that son that causes anguish to his mother or mother-in-law, or father or father-in-law. At the same token, you never want to be that parent that causes anguish to his son or to his daughter or to his son-in-law or daughter-in-law. You don't want to be that parent that literally causes divorce that's unrepairable. Many times you have people advising people, oh yeah, you know what? Who needs get a divorce? Who needs get a divorce? And it's easy to say words, get a divorce, but as soon as they listen to you and they get a divorce, they're left alone because you're out of advice and you have nothing to help them with. So if they need any help with anything, all of a sudden your phone is busy. It goes to voicemail. So it's important to know that if you're going to ask for guidance, ask for guidance from people that have your best interest in mind and are not giving you biased advice. They're not giving you their self-interest. They're not trying to live through you vicariously, where sometimes you have older people give advice to younger people simply with what they want to do. They're miserable in their marriage, so they figure if you became single or you stayed single, that would be better because then you can have a good time like they want to have. So you have to be very careful with who you ask advice from. And of course, the Torah has endless advice about every single circumstance out there. If you're not a Talmid Chacham yourself that already has a rabbi that can help him and double check what you see, of course, you have to have a Talmid Chacham. You have to have a rabbi that's going to guide you in different things during your life. And not only come to your rabbi when it comes to things that you think it comes to. Many times people come to the rabbis when they're about to get a divorce, but they don't come to the rabbi when they're about to get married. They come to the rabbi when they're deciding if they should buy a second house or to move to a different neighborhood. But they don't come to the rabbi when they bought the second business. Many times people pick and choose when they come to the rabbi, which is a very big mistake. Why? Because if you really are looking for Da'at Torah, you're looking for someone to guide you, you have to make sure that person that's a Talmid Chacham, is going to guide you through thick and thin. Not necessarily because he needs the work. Trust me when I tell you, he doesn't need the work. He doesn't feel like, he doesn't need to give you this advice. It's that you need it. You need that guidance, you need that advice. Not necessarily the Chacham needing it. And of course, a person that has a little bit of wisdom in his head or her head will always look for what Da'at Torah is, much more than they're going to look at what the Da'at of her sister-in-law is, or the Da'at of her girlfriend, or his boy from work, or his colleague, or whoever. So it's important to know that Da'at Torah is always going to be better than everybody else's. Always. Why? Because this is the will of Hashem. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to do. And sometimes a person is not going to know. Is not going to know that they're steering wrong. They're not going to know that they're steering wrong because it seems like it's coming from a good place. Seems like it's coming from a good place. But of course, if a person is not glued to the Torah, they can easily walk in the road of Shem Yishmo. So now, we have a situation here where the Gaon Vilna is pleading with his wife to honor his mother. And he doesn't ask her this as a simple favor. Rather, he is pleading with her because this is a mitzvah from the Torah. Not just a rabbinical edict, not just a suggestion for having peace, but rather a mitzvah from the Torah. Mitzvah from the Torah. Where in the Torah do we see this? So there are many places. The Yalkut Shimoni in Parashat Yitro says on the pasuk where Moshe Rabbeinu sees Yitro came, left Midian, left everything behind, and came with Moshe Rabbeinu's wife Tzipora and his 2 kids to Mount Sinai to see his son-in-law. He abandoned the idolatry. He came to see his son-in-law. Moshe Rabbeinu is the king. Moshe Rabbeinu has gone through all of these different miracles that destroyed the biggest civilization in the world, Egypt. Now he's at Mount Sinai talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu like a person talks to his friend. He's the prophet of all prophets. He is literally a king. And now you have Yitro, former idol worshiper. A former idol worshiper that literally was the Kohen Gadol of idolatry. Of every type of idolatry, comes and wants to see his son-in-law. And initially, the Yitro says to the people, please tell Moshe that I'm here, and if he's not going to come here because of me, and I don't have the, I don't have the status, surely he would come because of his daughter and his kids. Moshe Rabbeinu comes with all of Am Yisrael. Because once Moshe comes, Aaron. After Aaron came, the Skenim came. And after that, all of Am Yisrael came to welcome Yitro. And Chachamim say, why did Yitro deserve all of this respect? HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent Moshe. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe, he abandoned the idolatry. I know exactly what's in his heart. Go and welcome him. And not just welcome him, give him respect. And Moshe sees his father-in-law, Yitro, and he kisses him, the Pasuk says. And the Midrash, Yakut Shimoni, says Moshe kissed his father-in-law, Yitro, out of respect, to teach us that we must respect our in-laws. We must respect our in-laws. Further, the Midrash Teilim, Mizmor Zayin, 7, Mizmor 7, brings David HaMelech. David HaMelech is quoted in Sefer Shmuel, Aleph, Shmuel 1, chapter 24, verse 11, saying, Avi, ראה גם ראה את כנף מעיליך בידי, ולא הרגתיך דע וראה כי אין בידי רע. David HaMelech says to Shaul HaMelech, my father, now you see that the corner of your me'il, of your jacket, your garment, was really his tzitzit, is in my hand, and I did not kill you. And there's no evil in my hand. No evil, I didn't kill you, because I'm not looking to kill you, like people are telling you, or that you think that I'm trying to kill you. What was the story behind this? Shaul HaMelech was a tzaddik yesod olam. So much so that when he became king, the Tanakh says Shaul was a baby. What does it mean, a baby? He had the sins of a baby, sinless. Shaul was Kodesh Kodashim. David HaMelech, Kodesh Kodashim. Mashiach Hashem. At some point, Shaul HaMelech had Ruach Shtut. The spirit of stupidity enter him. This is in essence another name for the Yetzer Hara. Give him the idea that David HaMelech is trying to kill him, is trying to steal the kinghood. Now, of course, David HaMelech is not trying to do that. And from that moment on, Shaul HaMelech tried chasing David to kill him. Time and time again, endlessly trying to kill him in different ways. And David knew that Shaul really is a tzaddik. Knew that he's a tzaddik, knew that this is a Yetzer Hara, and therefore, even when he had the opportunity, or multiple opportunities, to kill Shaul, he refused to kill him. Even when he was told, listen, even in the gate of heaven, they opened it up, and you're allowed to kill him, you're defending yourself. David says, no, Shaul is Mashiach Hashem. Shaul is the Messiah of Hashem, he's a tzaddik. I'm not going to kill him. Now, one of the things that David had to suffer through is that one of his wives was a woman named Michal, Tzadikah named Michal. Now, this Michal was the daughter of Shaul. But after Shaul had this thought that David is not exactly the right one, and so on, he decided to take away this wife. So, in essence, David was the son-in-law of Shaul HaMelech. So imagine this, your father-in-law is also the king, and he not only takes your wife, but he also tries to kill you, time and time again. And you refuse to kill him. Why? Because you know he's righteous in reality. So now, one of the times that David HaMelech had an opportunity to kill Shaul, instead of killing him, while Shaul HaMelech was sleeping, he cut off the corner of his tzitzit. And after that, he came to the top of the hill, exited the camp while everybody else was sleeping. Then he made enough noise to wake everybody up, to make sure that Shaul sees in his hand is the corner of your tzitzit. Look what I have in my hand. That means I cut it off myself. I could have just killed you instead. But he doesn't just say, look what I have, like I just said, but rather he says, the Pasuk says, see my father, see. Meaning that even at this point, after Shaul has been trying to kill him time and time again, David HaMelech still calls him father. Now, this is not just a simple respect. This has halachic ramifications. This statement has halachic ramifications. The Shulchan Aruch and the Rambam paskin that in a Yoreh De'ah, in Siman Resh Mem 240, Seif Kaf Dalet, it's 24, 240-24. Chayav Adam lechabed chamiv. Rabbi Yosef Karo paskins, a person is obligated to honor his father-in-law. And then the Rama comes and says, Yesh omrim de'en adam chayav b'kvod avi aviv, ela dechavad b'kvod aviv yoter mikvod aviv. So here the Rama says that some say that he's obligated to honor his father like his honor his father-in-law like his father, but this is what was not really the psak halacha across the board. Why would anybody say that he has to honor his father like his father-in-law? I'm sorry, why he has to honor his father-in-law like he honors his father? Because of that pasuk. Because of that pasuk. And in fact, this is what the Ben Ish Chai paskins in his responsa in Shana Shniya Parashat Shoftim Seif Lamed. The Ben Ish Chai paskins that a person must honor his father-in-law like his father, based on this pasuk in Shmuel Aleph 24:11, where King David calls his father Avi, meaning that he's honoring him like he honored his father, not just father-in-law, like people would think. And the same with the wife honoring the mother-in-law. As it's written in Sefer Shiurei Bracha. So here we see that this obviously is applicable for both the father-in-law, the mother-in-law, but Shulchan Aruch, what we go by, Sfaradim go by Shulchan Aruch, you have to honor your father-in-law. That's where it ends. If somebody goes by the stringency of the Ben Ish Chai, or the psak of the Ben Ish Chai, I should say, then he would actually have to honor his father like he has to honor his father-in-law like he honors his father. Now, many people don't even know the halachot of honoring their parents. In fact, there's a Sefer Be'ezrat Hashem that's going to come soon by the Rishon LeZion of the different halachot of honoring the parents as part of the Yalkut Yosef. That's in English, Be'ezrat Hashem. So, this is something that most people don't really understand, honoring parents. In some cases, they listen too much. In other cases, they don't listen at all. In some cases, they end up getting a divorce, or they don't marry a girl because, the father doesn't like her. In other cases, they call their parents by their first name, or simply yell at them and curse at them. So a person needs to know the laws of honoring parents. Needless to say, needs to know that he has to apply some of these laws to honoring his in-laws. Now, in Siman Kaf A of the same Shulchan Aruch, he gives a few other things, of course. We're only going to touch the surface on a couple of other things that the Shulchan Aruch says here. He says, אם האב רוצה לשרת את הבן, מותר לקבל ממנו, אלא אם כן האב בן תורה. תלמיד שרוצה ללכת למקום אחר שהוא בוטח שיראה סימן ברכה בתלמודו לפני הרב ששם, ואביו מוחה בו, לפי שדואג שבאותה העיר העובדי כוכבים מעלילים, אינו צריך לשמוע לאביו בזה. He says that if there is a person who has a father who wants to serve him, he's allowed to allow his father to serve him, unless the father is a Talmid Chacham. Already showing us there's different conditions for a father that's Talmid Chacham. What about if a person wants to go to a different place, move to a different country, a different city, because he's certain that over there he's going to be able to have more bracha in his Torah learning. But his father says, no, you can't go over there. There's a lot of idolatry over there. There's a lot of bad things over there. You can't go. I forbid you from going there. Yeah, but Abba, I want to go to Eretz Yisrael because I have my Rav over there. No. It's no good. Over there, there's the Zionist, there's this. Oh, Rabbi, I want to go to Florida because my rabbi is over there. No. There's this, there's that. Yeah, but I'm going to learn better over there. Not allowed to go, I forbid you. What is the boy to do? Paskin the Shulchan Aruch, ignore his father. Simple. Even if the father rebukes him and forbids him from going to a different place, even though he knows he's going to learn more Torah, the young man does not have to honor his father in this regard. Why? Ani Hashem. Hashem comes first, before the father. So from here we learn, so long as the father and the mother are compliant with the Torah, and they're not telling you to go against the Torah, you have to honor them. They tell you to go get them a coffee, they tell you that you have to go clean something, you have to, whatever it is they tell you, you have to go do it. Even if they individually are not exactly the most righteous. In fact, I once heard from Rabbi Ephraim the craziest thing in the world. This is, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I had a question from somebody about Kibud Avayim. I said, listen, his mom is not nice, and does he have to honor her at all? Ephraim tells me, even if his mom was a zonah, she was a prostitute in the street, he still has to honor her so long as she's not going against the Torah when it comes to the issue she's asking him for. Meaning, if she's asking him to go to the store for her, she's asking him to help her with something, he has to do it. So long as she's not asking the boy or the girl to go against the Torah, he has to honor her. Even if she on her own time is a prostitute in the streets. Doesn't make a difference. He has to listen to her. She's still his mother. This was to me at the time, and still to this day, shocking. Shocking. Why? Because you figure, if my parents are not Rav Ovadia or the Rav Eliashiv, then I don't have to honor them. If they're not tzaddikim, I don't have to honor them. If they're not at least religious, I don't have to honor them. This is not correct. This is not correct. In fact, even if you're not Jewish, you have to honor your parents. Why? These are part of the moral laws that are supposed to make a person better. Both for Jews and Gentiles. But if the father tells you, no, you cannot go to this other place because I'm afraid of the idol worship that's there or bad things that are there. Yeah, but my rabbi is there. I can learn better Torah over there. I don't care about your rabbi. I want you to stay here next to me. You do not have to listen to your father. Why? His opinion is against the Torah in that regards. Comes the Rama and says, וכן אם האב מוחה בבן, לישא איזו אישה, שיחפוץ בה הבן, אין צריך לשמוע אל האב. When it comes to the issues of a marriage, the father rebukes the son because he wants to marry this girl. The boy does not have to listen to his father. Why? The boy is allowed, if he's obviously old enough already, he's beyond bar mitzvah, he's his own man, he can choose to marry the girl, she's a righteous girl, even if the father doesn't like her, that's his problem. That's his problem. It's not the son does not have to listen to her. To him. Why? Because that is, again, a problem. A problem when parents get in the way of a shidduch. They are literally putting their lives in danger. There are many chachamim who have discussed this issue. I'm not going to go deep into it, But Chachamim say that when somebody gets in the way of a shidduch, she's supposed to marry him, but the parents break it up for no good reason. Simple. They don't like his parents. He is a good boy. He's a good boy, but they don't like his parents. Or the father and his father, they got into a tiff in business. And therefore he doesn't want his daughter to marry. He breaks up everything. Or Chas v'Shalom, he causes a divorce. This Rabotai Karim puts the parents' life in actual danger. Why? Because Baruch Hu killed them on the spot. And unfortunately, we've seen this. We've seen this movie. Let's just say that. Why? There are unfortunately people that have ego bigger than the world. They get in the way of a marriage, and then people are surprised that bad things happen to them. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not allow such things. So it's very, very important before you shell out advice to people, as a friend, as a parent, or anything like that, make sure that you double check what the Torah thinks, not necessarily what you think. Because if you give somebody advice to get a divorce, or to not marry somebody, and in essence you're breaking up a family, you're breaking up a marriage, unless what you're saying is according to the Torah, you literally just committed spiritual suicide, and could potentially be physical suicide. So it's a very, very dangerous thing to get involved in such things. But nonetheless, there are still many people, if not I could even dare to say most people, have a very difficult time with their in-laws. Now, a very difficult time with their in-laws. Part of the reason is because at times, if it's not because of the Torah, that's the primary reason why people have a problem with their in-laws, is because one of the parties, if not all of the parties, are not following the Torah. They're simply following their emotions, they're following their ego, they're following what they think, and they don't actually know what Dat Torah is. They don't know what the opinion of the Torah is. They didn't consult with the rabbi, or sometimes they consulted with the wrong rabbi, and this unfortunately happens. This happens many times. People go to rabbis that are as emotional as the people, and the rabbi forgets that there is a Torah, so he gives you what he thinks should be done. And of course, this leads to a lot of sins. I mean, this is not a new thing. And it's not just with marriage, it's with a lot of things. I just heard a story that when the Chazon Ish came to Eretz Yisrael, during the beginning, right when he came to Eretz Yisrael, it was already getting to the Shnat Shemitah. And it was the first time that the Chazon Ish lived in Eretz Yisrael when Shnat Shemitah would be there. So he went to look at the farmers, all the different people that had the fields and so on, to see how they're preparing for the Shemitah. For him, it's as exciting as possible. He learned all the halachot. He's looking forward to teaching everybody. And to his dismay, the Chazon Ish found out that practically nobody that he would see was looking to observe the Shemitah. No one was looking to stop working. In fact, they thought he was crazy for even suggesting that they should do it, because they said, listen, how are we going to eat? If we don't harvest, we don't get all of our crops, how are we going to eat? And either way, he said, yeah, but it's against the Torah. He goes, oh, no, don't worry, Rabbi. Our rabbis told us it's okay. There's an etel. There's an etel to do it. And the Chazon Ish worked tooth and nail, publishing an entire sefer about this issue, lecturing about it, developing relationships with these farmers, and literally got many of them to start keeping Shemitah. But the ones that didn't keep, it wasn't that they didn't keep because they didn't care about Hashem, or they didn't keep because they simply were just money hungry. No, they got rabbinical permission. They got rabbinical permission. Now again, sometimes you have rabbinical permission that's legit to do something and be more lenient. But sometimes those rabbinical permissions are like the rabbinical permissions that the cash advance business has. The rabbinical permission to steal money. There is no such thing. There is no such permission to steal money. Same thing like this rabbinical permission to benefit from the idolatry of the wigs that they have in the market today. That is, over 90% of the wigs in the world today are coming from idolatry. There is no rabbinical permission. Whoever tells you this is kosher and has rabbinical stamp, you can take that rabbinical stamp and the rabbis that wrote it and put them all in the garbage pail. Why? Because there is no such thing to benefit from idolatry. There is no such thing. And much, much greater poskim than I could ever be have ruled this way. Rabbi Yashiv, Rabbi Vadia, and others. Rishon LeZion, Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef. There's no such thing as rabbinical permission to benefit from this idolatry of wigs. Same thing with this cash advance business. There's no rabbinical permission from stealing from people. Whether they're Jews or Gentiles, doesn't make a difference. They said, no, we're not stealing. We're doing business. It's okay. The people are accepting. They know that they're going to be paying 80% interest. It's okay by them. They need the money. And they think that they're going to make much more than 80%. So it ends up being profitable for them. Mambo jumbo. Go tell that to the Yetzer Hara as he bakes you in Gaon at some point if you don't do tshuva. There is no rabbinical permission for such things. But unfortunately, there's always going to be a guy that says he's a rabbi and he's going to give you permission. If you want to have real rabbinical permission, you have to look seriously. What is the real opinion of Da'at Torah, and not look for it at some local community rabbi that is only looking to give you an opinion and you alone, because nobody else is ever going to listen to him, because no one else even knows who he is. You have to make sure that you double check everything. Why? Especially when you realize your own eternity is on the line. Your own eternity is on the line. A person that steals money has to be reincarnated, come back to this life, and aside from that, has to get a lot of suffering for stealing. People don't understand such things. Or people say, listen, there's a new permission out there. If the husband doesn't want to give a get, you can get a get from the rabbi. The rabbi can give you a get instead of your husband. There is no such thing as getting a get from a rabbi. Even if the rabbi has been a rabbi for 1,000 years, there is no such thing as getting a get from a rabbi. If the husband doesn't give the get, there is no get. But of course, some women think, listen, he doesn't want to give me a get, the rabbi gave me a get, I'm free to marry. No, you're an adulteress. That's what you are. You're an adulteress. You're not married. You're an adulteress. You're married to the first guy that doesn't want to give you a get. He's a terrible guy, but you are an adulteress. He's going to get punished, but you're going to Gaon after you finish kafakela. Why? Because that's what it says. Yeah, but the rabbi told me. He's going there with you. Don't worry. He's going to sign something for you over there also. Why? That's what it says. That's what it says. You want to argue? Argue with sources. Argue with sources. Now, Rabotai Karim, we have a situation here where you have in-laws that are simply difficult to deal with. What do you do with them? What do you do with them? You have to pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Try to see where the difficulty is really coming from. Is it as a result of your wife? It's not honoring them. She's causing them the tension. Or is it really because they're difficult? Why does that make a difference? Because if there's a difficulty between your parents and your wife, and it's because your wife is disrespecting them, you have yourself a very serious problem. What kind of problem? The Ben Ish Chai brings the Tana Devei Eliyahu Hanavi, who writes about this topic, who says the following. I'm going to read you his language. If he wed a woman who disrespects his parents, even in their old age, then he is judged as if he was a noef, an adulterer, all of his life. And this is why, in the 10 Commandments, the mitzvah of lo tin'af, don't be an adulterer, is very close to the mitzvah of the commandment of honor your parents. Honoring your parents is the 5th commandment. Then you have number 6, don't murder. Number 7 is don't be an adulterer. The question is, okay, you could say every mitzvah in the 10 commandments is close. Technically means just 10. I mean, yes, this is closer. What's the connection? Why, if somebody's wife is disrespecting his parents on a regular basis, they're already older, she says the hell with you and where you came from. He's my husband, I can do whatever I want with him. And ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, and she has no respect whatsoever. She's one of these chutzpaniot, obnoxious girls. Why is it your fault? Well, you wed her. You married her. Okay, I married her. I didn't know that she's going to be this way and so on. Said that. You were still responsible to fix it. And you didn't. You allowed it to continue. In fact, it got worse and worse. She continued disrespecting your parents. She continued hanging up the phone on your mom. She continued closing the door in your father's face. And sometimes she even spit in his face. And you say, listen, she's my wife. What can I do? Eliyahu Navi says, in Shamayim they're going to judge you with all of your Shabbat, with all of your tzedakah, with all the good things that you do. They're going to consider you an adulterer. Why an adult? This is when Ben Ishchai comes and brings the Tana Devei Eliyahu. It's not like Yaron Reuven. Talking about tzaddikim, navi'im. Saying serious stuff. Why? Why would such a thing? How do you connect the two? Okay, she did it and I'm getting judged to that regard? So the first raya, the first proof is, because the two commandments are close to each other. No, there's a lot of things close to each other. Does that mean that it's all the same? In the Torah, everything that's close to each other, there's a reason for it. There's always a reason for it. If it's even spelled in a certain fashion, there's a reason for it. Everything has a reason for it. Rabbi Chaim brings a clarification. He says that when a man stays with his wife without any effort to love her, and anyone says, what do you mean? Love comes naturally, doesn't require effort. You're living in movies. Movies, love does not require effort. In reality, love requires daily effort. Why? Because what they have in the movies and what people think is love is what we call karet, because it's lust. They love the body. They love the good they get out of this person. They love what benefit they have out of this relationship. They love the convenience. They love even the idea of being with this person. He's an important person. She is a good-looking person. He is a good-looking person. He is a certain job. She has a certain job, certain status. That's not love. It's not love. Love requires daily effort to constantly look for ways to better each other. Constantly look for ways to make each other happy. Constantly look for ways to build this relationship in order to build a us. And as the Rambam says, Ishto kegufo. His wife has to be like his body. Meaning, as if it's the same flesh. He has to honor her. He has to love her like himself and honor her even more than himself. But there are some guys that as soon as they say, Areat mekudeshet li, you are my wife, they forget about all that stuff. And they simply say, listen, it'll work naturally. She asks him, honey, why don't you tell me you love me? No reason for that. Why not? I told you like 20 years ago. If it would have changed, I would have said something. Nothing changed. He's cheap even with words. Presents, non-existent. She says, honey, why don't you go get me something nice for the holiday? Chachamim, I heard in the Shiur Torah, you're supposed to buy your wife something nice, maybe for Rosh Chodesh, for the Chag. It's halacha. Pseder, I'll get to it. Yeah, but you said you're going to get to it the last 6 holidays. And nothing happened. Listen, you have everything that you need. If you would have needed it, I would have noticed it. You don't need diamond earrings. You don't need expensive stuff. But you need an expensive watch. You need an expensive car. She doesn't need, but he needs somehow. Somehow he always needs, but she never needs. Best yet is husbands that treat their wives like little children. I'm taking your car. What do you mean you're taking my car? You didn't talk to me a certain way. You didn't do this. That's it. You don't have a car now. Walk wherever you want to walk. He takes everything, he takes her stuff. Why? He treats her like she's a slave. If she doesn't obey his commands, that's it. She doesn't have a car, she doesn't have a phone, she doesn't have privileges, he makes her sleep in a different room, all types of Arab mentality type of behavior. Which of course is not something that you do in a marriage where you're developing a love. In a marriage that you develop to be eternal. And that's one of the things why when there is really a relationship where you see the two people are a match, they have something, there is some chemistry there, there is some good in there, but they have problems, they disagree on things, and so on. You have to do whatever you can to keep them married. Give them guidance, be patient, tell her this, tell her that. You have to do whatever you can to keep them married. But not keep them married for the sake of the kids, or keep them married for the sake of not being divorced. Keep them married meaning get them to happiness. Get them to happiness. Get them to learn how to be happy with each other by fixing themselves and thereby fixing the relationship. But if a person thinks that it's going to work naturally, just like his digestive system works naturally, he thinks his marriage is going to work naturally, then he has a problem. Why he has a problem? Says Rav Ephraim that if a person stays with his wife without any effort to love her, and therefore he will not have any of the holy kavanot that the sages decreed when he is intimate with her, he's not going to think any appropriate thoughts. It's going to be purely lust. And that is a problem. Why? Because this is similar to what Yecheskel said. Yecheskel said in the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in chapter 20, verse number 38, ובראתי מכם המורדים והפושעים בי בארץ מגוריהם. Yecheskel says, I will separate from you who rebel and transgress against me. Kadosh Baruch Hu says. Who is this statement said about? The Gemara, Masechet Nedarim, page 20b, says that there are 9 circumstances where the cohabitation between a man and a woman, man and his wife, leads to the birth of degenerate children. Based on this verse in Yecheskel, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that I will select among you those who rebel and transgress against me, he will stay away from them. Rabbi Levi explains this verse, saying, these are the children of people who manifest in the following characteristics, meaning that their intimacy is in such a fashion. Bnei Ema, Bnei Anusa, the children of fear, the children of forced woman, the children of a hated woman, the children of a excommunicated man or woman, the children of an exchanged woman, the children of strife, the children of drunkenness, the children of a woman who has been divorced in mind of a husband, the children of mingling, and the children of a brazen woman. What are all of these? Sometimes you see, kid comes to the world, already at a young age you notice there's something wrong with this kid. He's always leaning towards the wrong things. Not he's a troublemaker like every little kid. No, he's evil. Simple. Evil kid. Wants to hurt people, steal stuff, hurt them, all types of things that are not really normal. And you see that they grow up and they become little Hitlers. And if you would give them an army, they would become Hitler. The Gemara says there's a reason for that. There's a reason why the Zionists that were not ashamed of their stealing not ashamed of their heretical behavior, and not even ashamed of killing each other. There's a reason why they came to the world. When they were trying to, the Zionists, when they were trying to broker a deal between themselves and the Nazis in order to make a lot of money but pretend as if they're helping Am Yisrael, one guy named Arsolov was one of the guys trying to broker this deal and was lending it. One of the other Zionists didn't appreciate that he got the deal, and as you would have it, Arsolov got murdered right next to his wife. The two people were caught, but released somehow because of clerical problems in the court. Now, of course, there's conspiracies to this day of who killed him, whether it was his colleagues, whether it was the rival Zionist, whether it was this, whether it was the Arabs. The reality is that during that time, that same day that he got murdered, there was an article in the paper. There was an article in the paper calling for his head to kill him by the rival Zionist. He was a Zionist and the other was Zionist, but they called him a traitor because he got this so-called deal. The point is that these types of people, they didn't just come to the world and become Erev Rav. They didn't just come to the world and become evil. You don't just become a guy that goes against all of the Gedolei Hador because you decided that nobody else knows animals like you do. And therefore, you're going to change the Torah because of it. And you're not going to be called a heretic. You're going to be the one that's right, and you're going to start your own little religion. These types of heretics are not just people that just become like that overnight. This is something that already many times has a problem already from before they came to the world, having to do with the intimacy between their parents. Intimacy having one of these 9 conditions. The first condition, the Gemara says, in the name of Rabbi Levi, are the children of fear. What are the children of fear? That the husband is so scary that the wife is scared not to be with him, because she knows that if she tells him she has a headache, because she really does, she tells him she doesn't feel good because she's recovering from, perhaps she just delivered a baby, or she simply doesn't feel well. If she says anything other than yes, it's going to be Gaon on earth for her. So from the fear, she submits, not because of love, not because she wants to be with him, simply she's scared to death. And she submits. That kind of intimacy, it's better off it never existed, because if a child comes from that, that's going to be a deformed child, spiritually deformed child. Children of a forced woman. What's a forced woman? This is unfortunately taking it a step further. She said, I don't want to be with him. He says, it's fine that you don't want to be with me. You're going to be with me anyway. Why? You're my wife. You're going to be with me whenever I want you to be. And he rapes his own wife. This, Rabotai, leads to deformed kids. Children of a hated woman. What's a hated woman? He looks at other girls. He likes his secretary. He likes his coworker. He likes some girl he saw on the street. He thinks about her. He doesn't really want to be with his wife. But he figures to stay with her. What if I get rid of her? I'm going to have to give her half the money. Then this, then that. No, you know what? I'll just stay with her. And that's it. I'll do whatever I want with her. Maybe I'll do whatever I want somewhere else too. Doesn't like his wife. He hates his wife, in fact. Children that come from that will be deformed. Hashem Shmo. Third, children of an excommunicated man or excommunicated woman. Person that's a heretic. Person that goes against Chachamim. Person that makes fun of the sages, of the rabbis. These are people that get excommunicated, and there are different conditions for why somebody goes on cherem, goes on nidui. And if the husband and the wife still are intimate during the time of their being on excommunication, and a child comes from that, that is a very serious problem. Why? That child will be a degenerate. Children of strife. This is unfortunately something that many people in the secular world and the non-Jewish world have no clue what they're doing to themselves. Why? They think that after you get into a fight, in order to resolve the fight, you should be intimate. They call it different words. Why? You get into a fight, the way to solve the fight is express your anger in different ways. And then they're surprised that they have deformed kids. Why? You're not supposed to have intimacy during such times. Not supposed to have intimacy during such times. Yeah, but after that, she was nicer to me. After that, he was nicer to me. Yeah, that's because the Satan got his. Instead of you guys fixing the root of the problem and creating a ahava, creating actual love, creating a real unity that's makes you more than a beast, you figured being a beast will create the unity. Children from such a thing can come out degenerates. Further, children of drunkenness. Some of these guys, they figure that the Bet Knesset is no longer a place that you just pray. It's also a place you get drunk. They go to shul on Saturday morning. They tell their wives they're going to pray like a good Jew. They come back a drunk. What happened? Is it Purim? No, we had a Fabring. Okay, Fabring, maybe have a l'chaim after you finish praying. No one said that you're allowed to pray to drink before you pray. Needless to say, no one said that you're allowed to be drunk. No, it's Chassidut. It's not Chassidut. It's a made-up craziness in your head. And some of these guys, literally, they're drunk on a regular basis. And the best thing is, they'll do it at night, in the morning, whenever you have liquor in front of them. Yalla, lechaim. If he forces his wife, or even if he doesn't force his wife, convinces his wife to be intimate with him while he's drunk, Hashem yishmor v'yatzil from such children that come out of such things. Well, we're just having a good time. The cow also has a good time. The horse has a good time. The rhinoceros has a good time. You could join them. Children of a woman who has been divorced in his mind. Meaning this guy, he already decided that he doesn't want her. He already decided he's going to divorce her. But he has a need. He has a physical need, and he hasn't found someone to replace her yet. And he hasn't divorced her yet, so technically she's still allowed to him. Why not, right? Once you decide you're divorcing her, now to touch her. You don't have to be actually divorced to stop touching her. You're not allowed to touch her once you decide there's a divorce. That's it. It's the end. Some of these guys, they figure, listen, if I don't give her a get, technically she's still my girl, right? No. She's not. And unfortunately, some of these young girls are not smart enough, not mature enough to actually separate themselves from whoever is now their ex. Because they figure, even though I moved out of the house and he's living there and I'm living somewhere else, we're on good terms. He calls me, says hello. Yeah, okay, hello, but why didn't he give you the get? No, we're going to get to that. Sometimes it's hard for him, it's hard for this, it's hard for that. No. Once there's a divorce, that's it. He wants to talk to a lawyer. Why? It has to be that way. You continue this relationship as if nothing happened, you're leading yourself to trouble. I had a situation like this. One person came to me crying. Why? Similar situation. This husband, who I would love to publicize his name. I honestly would love to publicize his name, but I still haven't gotten permission to. This Rasha Merusha, criminal among criminals, pretends to be a rabbi, pretends to know something or two. He's an evil, vicious person, and I know this for a fact. Eventually, his wife has had enough of all the horrible things he was doing. That's it. It's the end. Okay. He pretends like he can fix it a million times. It doesn't work. Now he delays the get. But she figured, listen, he's living in a different house. I'm living in a different house. What's the problem of saying hello? At least we'll be more cordial. Well, one cordial led to another. He decided to show up at our new house. And he decided to say, listen, you still don't have a get. Why don't you be with me? No, I don't want to be with you. I want to move on with my life already. I'm waiting for the get already for 4 months, 5 months. Get out of here. What? Get out of here. Trach! Gives her a beating of a lifetime. We had to call the police to go to the house. Miskena, the girl's crying non-stop. Why? She stayed friends with the guy. Used to be a husband. Lachically still is. Shem Yishmo. So now, children that come from such a relationship where he already, even if they're living in the same house, but in his mind, he's letting her go. A child that comes out of such a intimate relationship is going to be a degenerate, Hashem Yishmo. Children of mingling. Children of mingling, Hashem Yishmo. This is a guy that is still practicing the multiple wives, and this is not common today, with the exception of a few places in the world. It's not very common, but nonetheless, when we had polygamy as part of the Torah, it's allowed, as long as obviously they're not sisters and so on. The whole relationship was Kodesh Kodashim. It's not for lustrous reasons and so on. People ask today, oh, Rabbi, can I marry a few girls? No. Oh, why not? It says in the Torah. Yes, it says in the Torah to do for people that were tzaddikim. You are looking to do it for all types of lustrous reasons. You think you're going to have some type of animal party with everybody put together. No. Each relationship was a separate relationship and so on. So much so that if he was intimate with one of his wives, when he actually thought it was a different wife, degenerate kids will come out from that. Shem Yishmo. Last but not least, children of a chutzpanit, of a brazen woman. Brazen woman, she has a lot of audacity. She's like these girls that think that they own the world. She is one of these women that is unfortunately a brazen in all aspects, including in the aspects of how she even requests intimacy. She demands it. Or better yet, she demands a lot of other things and puts things on the line as a result. Point being is, these types of intimacies lead to disastrous kids. And now, Rabbi Ephraim says, based on this Gemara that we learned, that is all based on a pasuk from the Tanakh from Sefer Yechezkel, we learn something critical. What do we learn? That all of these intimate relations, all these cohabitations, had no love whatsoever in them, but rather were acted as a result of pure lust, without any love whatsoever, without any holiness whatsoever, and thereby lead to a disaster. If a person has a wife that's a brazen woman, that is disrespecting his parents, surely he's going to hate her. And thereby she will earn herself 2 out of the 9 conditions of bringing damage to the world. From there we understand why Eliyahu Navi said, if he married a woman that goes against his parents, disrespects his parents, I should say, even at their old age, she cares less about anything, he's going to be judged as if he's an adulterer. We see here that these types of relationships, where a man is with a hated woman, bring what a relationship with an adulterer brings. And because they're judged the same. Because they're judged the same, Hashem Yishmo. If a man has a child with a zonah, in essence, he is this is the type of child he will get. Same goes if he has a child with a woman that he hates. If his wife is cursing out his parents, how could he not hate her? So from here we see, Rabotai, that the issues of problems with in-laws are not simple issues. They're not things that, they don't get along, but everything else works out. No, it's not so simple. It's not so simple. Shalom Bayit means Shalom Bayit, like everything. And a person has to do whatever he can to develop that. It all starts with his own relationship with his wife, to do whatever he can to see if there's an issue. What's the root of the issue? What's the root of the issue? Now, the way it's supposed to be is that it's supposed to be a marriage that is beautiful, a marriage that is, in essence, his marriage is supposed to connect him even more to his wife, but also to appreciate his mother even more as a result. Why? Not necessarily to go to her house every day and call her every 15 minutes. Because one of the mistakes people make is that they ask their wives, who do you love more? Me or your father? Or she asks him, who do you love more? Me or your mother? These are Satan, tools of the Satan. But if a person truly understands what a marriage is supposed to be, and his wife does also, their appreciation of each other, their love of each other should also value where they came from. If they came from a good place, if they had a good upbringing and their parents helped them and so on, they should appreciate them. If they didn't, obviously, then at least they're changing the situation. Their kids will have that. Why? The Gaon, Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, Alav Shalom, writes in his commentary on Sefer Bereshit, Parashat Chaye Sarah, in Perek Chaf Dalet 24, Pasuk Samech Zayin. And he says the following. And now I'm going to show you something truly beautiful. 4 words that are the most beautiful in the world. So beautiful that they're in essence he's saying, they're the most beautiful 4 words that Hashem brought to the world since the time of Chava, since the time he brought Chava to Adam, because she was very beautiful, until the end of days, until Mashiach comes. These are the 4 most beautiful words that exist. Which words? The words from Parashat Chaye Sarah, chapter 24, verse Samech Zayin, 67, where it says, Vayinachem Yitzchak achrei imo. And Yitzchak consoled after his mother. The mother of Yitzchak Avinu, Sarah, died. And the Pasuk says that Yitzchak consoled after his wife. When did he console after his wife? After he married Rivka. There's the Pasuk before that says that he married Rivka. She became his wife, and he loved her. And thus, Yitzchak consoled after his mother. Verl says these are the four most beautiful words in creation. Why so? Why is that so beautiful? What's so special about them? He says, here we have Gever ben Arbaim, a 40-year-old man, that does not find any consolement after the death of his mom, and finally is consoled from his wife. This is the significance of a woman for Am Yisrael. That unlike the Westerners, the secular people he's talking about, that focus on harmony and all types of words. Oh, I love you, Pookies, and baby, and you're my eyes, and you're my leg, and you're my everything. I give you everything, I give you my heart. You know, that type of speech. He says, this is all kepitrut aluv. This is all nonsense. This is complete wasted nonsense, this type of language. Rather, here we see that after Sarah Imenu left the world, there was a missing spiritual status in the world, that was in his house. Something significant was missing that Yitzchak simply could not live with. But then Yitzchak found this in his wife. And that's why the Midrash says that Rav Hirsch brings in the Midrash Rabbah in Sefer Bereshit, he says that Rivka actually looked like Sarah to him. What does it mean she looked like Sarah? That the spiritual status, the love that they had at that point, consoled him in such a fashion that he saw his mother in her. Now this is very, very deep. Why is very deep? Any person that has a decent mother, it's not one of these crazy people out there that gives their kids drugs and all types of things. Any person has a good mother, literally, should kiss the feet that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave her. When he understands what she had to do in order to bring him or her to the world. To carry a baby, destroy your body, that in itself takes 2 years to recover, sometimes longer for some women. To carry a baby for 9 months is not the only thing. Even though most people just think about that. Oh yeah, she carried him. Okay, but that's not the only thing. Why? Because sometimes the recovery from giving birth is much more difficult than the actual pregnancy. But that's not it. To raise that kid when he's an infant, wake up every hour because he doesn't or she doesn't want to go to sleep, to make sure he eats, to make sure he's breathing, to make sure that he's still alive, to make sure he's clean. That's just the beginning. And the sleepless nights continue, because even after that little baby turns into a child, it doesn't decrease their needs. Rather, it increases their needs. Now they want attention. Now they want presents. Now they want affection. Now they want this. Now they want that. 2 minutes later, they want something else. And whenever they don't get it, they're going to react in all types of ways that you couldn't believe. You couldn't believe is even possible when you're a first-time parent. And that's not enough, because you have to pay for all of it. Yeah, but how am I going to pay for all of it if I can barely have, enough money for the rent? You have to pay for this kid to eat. You have to pay for this kid to keep getting new clothes, because he keeps growing. She keeps growing. The clothes that you got them in the beginning, the clothes that you got for a present from all the family that was excited for a new baby, are only good for the first few months. After that, you have to start getting used to getting new clothes. getting new size diapers, getting new bottles, getting new everything. And all of a sudden you start feeling like you're working this job and maybe even a second job just so this kid could eat. And you don't even have any peace of mind out of it, and you're not even enjoying some of the process because you never get enough time to think, because every 2 seconds they need something from you. But you as a parent continue to give this kid the attention and give them love and give them kisses and to give them food, and then they grow and eventually they say a word, but it's not the word you were hoping for. Instead of saying mommy, they say Abba, not necessarily because they're close to their father, but that's just simply easier to say for a little baby. Practically every baby says Abba first. Now everybody gets excited. Oh, look, he said Abba. He loves his dad. No. That's the only thing that comes out of his mouth. But you got offended. Why? Because you're the one that hasn't slept in 3 or 4 months. And how come he said Abba? But you suck it up and say, okay, whatever. No, he's just a little baby. He's just a little baby, even though it hurts. And even though you're a little more hormonal and you're more emotional. And you really wanted that kid to say Ima. By the time he says Ima, you've already forgotten about the pain that you had from Abba. And you continue taking care of this kid, looking forward for him to say more words. And eventually that kid is going to say more words. And sometimes that kid's going to grow up and say some words that he doesn't really understand what they mean, but they hurt you. But you still go on. You still take care of him. You still work 1 or 2 or 3 jobs just to make sure that he eats. Just to make sure that he lives. Just to make sure that you can pay for school. And you can't just send this kid to any school. You want to send him to the best school, to the best teacher. Because he's your kid. And then if that's not enough, the kid needs more stuff, and the kid needs more clothes. And you make sure he has the clothes, and you make sure he has the school. But he's still not happy. Why? Because he saw that his friend has a bicycle, and he doesn't have a bicycle. And he makes it seem as if you're the worst parent on planet Earth because you didn't get him a bicycle. And you feel like, wow, I can't believe that I'm the worst parent. How come I didn't think about getting him a bicycle? But I can't afford a bicycle. And you feel like you truly are the worst parent on earth because you cannot afford a bicycle, but it's really not your fault. HaKadosh Baruch Hu decreed this. And your kid simply doesn't understand the significance of his word and how much he's hurting his ima. And you don't understand that he's just a little baby and he doesn't understand. But you keep going. And you keep going. And the kid grows up and he forgets to say thank you after you got him the bike that took you working an extra job, working an extra shift, and you finally got him the bike. And before he has enough time to say thank you, he's already off with his friend on his new bike. And you just can't help yourself but start crying because you achieved something, even though that little rat doesn't appreciate it. And he keeps going, and he keeps learning, and one day that bike is not good enough. And he wants a skateboard, or he wants a shirt, or he wants some game that he's not allowed to have. And you have to tell him no. And he makes it out as if you're the worst mother on planet Earth. And you start thinking maybe he's right. And your husband comes to you and he tells you, no, you're the best mother on planet Earth. You give this kid everything. But that only consoles you for half the words. Because he said it. Because she said it. And sometimes your daughter doesn't get what she wants, and she says something that literally breaks every parent's heart into 50 million pieces. I hate you. And you can't believe it. How could my daughter that I got out of my own body say such a thing? I hate you? This is what they learn in school? Sometimes. Sometimes you weren't careful enough with what friends your kids hang out with. So instead of getting themselves acclimated to saying thank you, I love you, or yes sir, or yes Ima, they say other things. They start talking like street kids, even if they sometimes wear a kippah. All of us have seen little kids with a kippah on talk like thugs. It exists in the world. Sometimes you're surprised how disrespectful the kids are in the Bet Knesset, and you say, wait a minute, when I was in public school, I didn't act like that. Just because they go to a yeshiva doesn't necessarily mean that they learn the things they need to learn in order to be decent kids. And surely if you approach their parents, you're not necessarily always going to get the results that you want, because sometimes the parents are the reason why the kids are the kids. And sometimes it is the school, and sometimes it's a combination, and sometimes just simply a bad friend. And you have a kid that grows up and he's 10 and 11 and 12 years old and everything is good. And the mom is happy. And she paid for everything, and he and her father paid for everything, and everyone's excited this kid is going in the right direction. And one day, Satan shows up in the form of a different gender. If he's a boy, shows up as a girl, and if he's a girl, shows up as a boy. And all bets are off. Why? Because now the Satan is running the show, and the kid forgets that he even has a Yetzirah Tov. And all of a sudden he wants a girlfriend, and all of a sudden she wants a boyfriend, and they don't think about them ever getting in trouble. And the parents can say what they want to say, but nothing's going to work. And you tell them, yeah, but she's not Jewish. Yeah, but she's still human. Yeah, but you're going to a Jewish school. Okay, Jewish school, and accepting. And the kid rationalized it, like that young boy that was 19 years old or 20 years old came to me and told me that he rationalized dating a non-Jewish girl because she lived next door to him and his parents never had any problem with them being friends. But yet one of the worst stories I ever saw was when I went to New York several years ago, and a father came to me crying, telling me that his boy that he paid for yeshiva in a modern Orthodox school to go through his whole life is now 23, 24 years old, and is announced to his father that he proposed to his non-Jewish girlfriend. And he said, I don't know what I did wrong, but somehow this kid ended up falling in love with someone he's not allowed to be with. And when you talk to that kid, it's as if you're talking to a wall. And the parents are crying because they put everything into that kid. They paid for the school, they paid for food, they sucked it up every time that kid said something inappropriate, even if it hurt. And then after all said and done, you figure, listen, everything worked out okay. They got the education, they lived, they did everything. Maybe I didn't get them the bike the time that they wanted, but I got it later on. Maybe I didn't get them on that trip when they asked for, but I got it later on, and we got there. And finally they tell you, okay, Abba, Ima, I'm getting married. What house are you giving me? House? What house? We barely could afford the rent for our own house. What do you mean? You have a savings account for me, don't you? No, we don't have a savings account for you. We don't have a savings account for ourselves. We're just making it by. Oh, okay, I have the worst parents. And you have some rotten kids that say that. And they're no longer kids, they're adults already. They're 20 years old, 25 years old. Talk to their parents as if they are a social security office that owes them money or something. Or they start talking to them like they're a collector from the mafia. Oh, you're going to pay for my wedding? If the parent has, and the kid is decent, sure, it's a mitzvah, it's good, help the kids. But many times, it doesn't work that way. Many times the kids demand that they get this and they get that. So much so that literally there are shidduchim broken over this stuff. Because one of the parents can't afford to give the kid what the other parent is giving their kid, not necessarily out of love, but rather because it's simply demanded. And when a person starts thinking about all of the sacrifices that they have gone through to raise their kid for the last 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, if they think about it deep enough, they'll start crying. Probably not very different from how the tzaddikim are going to cry when they see Mashiach. And if a person doesn't have kids and has no idea what I'm talking about, just think about what you did to your parents. Or even in the case that you were a good kid, your parents still cried over you. Your parents still struggled to keep you alive. Every parent, no exceptions. So when a person says that the love that I have for my wife reminds me of my mother. It's not chas v'shalom, a provocative filth that is thought in the filthy minds of certain people. But rather, it's a deep love that a person is showing his wife as a result of the appreciation that he has for his mother. Yitzchak Avinu was consoled by Rivka. Why? He saw his mother in her. He saw that she is going to do the same thing his mother did. He saw she's going to exert herself and try and do everything possible to bring the best possible kedusha that exists as a result of this marriage. Just like his mom sacrificed her own life for the sake of bringing this child to the world and raising him, he says, my wife will do the same. Not just for my marriage with her, but for our kids together. And that brought him a deep emotional love for her. When a person understands what having a spouse is, and what they're getting as a result of it, they should have nothing but gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that they were fortunate enough to have such a person. When a person is not grateful for their spouse and doesn't find a reason to say thank you every single day, that means they have no idea why they got married in the first place. They have no idea why there's anybody else in the world that exists other than them, because they can't see anyone else but themselves. Only when a person sees outside of their own self-interest do they start appreciating the world around them. Do they start appreciating what the world around them is doing for them. And therefore, when a person has a situation where his mother-in-law is someone that is not exactly on his level for whatever reason or another, she's not smart enough, she's not this enough. If he loves his wife enough, he'll find a way to make peace. And the same thing goes with the girl. Even if his mother, her husband's mother, is not exactly the most wonderful person on planet Earth. Sometimes she's annoying, sometimes she's demanding, sometimes she treats our son like he's still a baby. If she truly loves her husband, she'll find a way to make peace. There was one time a young man that told me that his mom is literally the devil. He hates her with full passion. Every time he gets into any type of issue in school, she rips him apart. And he says, she destroys my morale, she destroys my this, she destroys my that. I hate her, I hate her, I hate her. Now, of course, if someone is reaching out to me, that means they're looking for some type of guidance. Because if they're looking to vent, usually there's somebody else for that. So I asked this young man, you willing to try something different? He said, yeah. I said, you right now told me that every time you get into any type of issue, as soon as you get home, your mom rips you apart. Tells you how you're a failure, how you're a baby, how you're this, how you're that. And you argue your point and say, no, I'm not a baby. Wah. Don't talk to me that way. You argue with her, but it doesn't work. Want to try something different? If you're strong enough, it'll work. What is it? Next time you come home and she rips you apart and she starts yelling and screaming, say, I'm sorry, you're right. What? Yeah, I'm sorry, you're right. Now, any of you clever people that are listening to this can already see it working. But if your ego is bigger than your intellect, you're going to say, no, but what about what I have to say? I have to protect myself. I have to defend my honor. Okay, then stay fighting. This type of advice doesn't only work between a child and their parent. It also works in marriage. It also works with in-laws. Sometimes, the best thing you can possibly do to somebody that's angry, somebody that is annoyed, even if they're wrong, is, I'm sorry, you're right. Why? Who cares? Second, you tell them, I'm sorry, you're right, you'll see their anger diffuse immediately in most normal people. Why? Because the whole yelling and screaming comes from ego. By saying, I'm sorry, you're right, you've given them what they wanted without really losing much. Now you could have in your mind, I'm sorry, but for something else, because you're really not sorry for whatever they're blaming you doing. And you could think about in your mind that you're right about not necessarily what you're saying, but rather about something else. Because you're so holy, you don't want anything untrue to come out of your lips. No problem. You can do that. But the most important thing is to make sure that you diffuse the problem before it gets bigger. The next time that your mother-in-law says that you are this, and that, and it's my son, and that, I'm sorry, you're right. Sometimes it'll work. Sometimes giving a person a little bit of respect, whether it's due or undue, doesn't really make much of a difference. Diffuses the problem before it gets bigger, before true hate is developed. And if a person loves their spouse enough, they'll do it for them. Not just the next time their spouse loses their mind on them, but sometimes even if their mother loses their mind. Your mother-in-law just lost her mind. Your father-in-law just lost his mind. I'm sorry, you're right. And you'll see that sometimes this eliminates issues from becoming bigger than what they need to be. Now, of course, it's very hard, especially when other people's yelling usually ignites your own ego to defend yourself, to show that you're right, and you're not going to be spoken to that way. We're all in the same boat. It's easier said than done, but it definitely should be done. Now, if a person listens to what the Chachamim say, he'll eventually arrive at different tshuvot that Chachamim talk about how a person benefits if he listens to Torah, not just in this world, but also in the next world. Whether it's in his work or it's his marriage. There's no place that the Torah did not cover. The responsa, Mishneh Halachot, by the Ugvarez Rav, Rabbi Menashe Klein, who at the end of his days moved from Yerushalayim to Brooklyn, New York. He was an extraordinary Talmid Chacham, has over 40 books that he published, 18 volumes of this specific responsa, called Mishneh Halachot. So the Baal Mishneh Halachot in Chelek Zayin, Siman Kuf Nun Hey, 155, has a tshuva to someone that asked him about the honoring of the in-law, of his mother-in-law. And the person said that the mother-in-law just became a widow, husband died, and she asked him to stop helping her around the house when they come over, when he comes over with his wife, her daughter, and the kids. Typically, they eat, they drink, they mess up the house. And of course, he likes to be a good yid and he likes to help. And now that her husband died, she says, don't help me anymore, because me working on fixing the house and cleaning the dishes and the clothes and so on, it gets my mind off of my husband that passed. So this Chacham says to the Rav, am I allowed to listen to her, or do I have to honor her according to the halakha? You have to honor your in-law. And if by listening to her, I'm not really giving her honor, because what I was doing, I was washing the dishes and cleaning and helping her around the house as a form of honoring her. But now she's telling me not to do it. So the Baal Mishnah Lachot responds to this question. After giving this person a lot of compliments of how he's, the way he describes it, the way people start their letters, like Dear Steve, and things like that. The way that the Rav, the Tzaddik, is describing this person that wrote him the question is unbelievable. You would think that the person that asked the question is the Gedol Hador. Anyway, he says that, simply put, of course you have to listen to her and not help around the house, because to listen to a person's request is honoring him. The same that we've learned from the Gemara in the Yerushalmi, in Masechet Kiddushim, in page 31b, with the story about Rabbi Ishmael. Rabbi Ishmael was one of the Gdolei Hador, to say the least. Kodesh Kodashim. One day, the mother of Rabbi Ishmael walks into the Bet Midrash. Comes to the heads of the Bet Midrash, says, I have a complaint to make. Oh, the mother of Rabbi Ishmael, complaint? Sure, yes, Giveret. I have a complaint to make. I want a bet din to judge against my son for not honoring me. The Chachamim at the bet din could not believe it. How could it be that Rabbi Ishmael is not honoring his mother, who's a tzadikah? How could such a thing be? They asked Giveret, what did he do? She says he won't listen to me. What? Rabbi Ishmael is not listening to his mother? What did he listening to for? Every day when he comes home from the Bet Midrash, all I ask him to do is let me wash his feet, and then take all that water I washed his feet from and drink it. He won't let me do it. He won't let me drink it. Chachamim said, bring Rabbi Ishmael. Said, Kvod Harav, what do you have to say for yourself? He says, Chas v'shalom, why, I'm going to let her drink my feet water? I can't do it. As soon as I knew she was doing that, I can't do it. I can't let her do it. Well, it's not honoring my mom. She's going to drink the water that my feet went into. It's going to violate honor of the mother. Chachamim paske no Rabbi Ishmael. You have to let her drink the water. Why? Because for her, your Torah is everything in the world. For her, the Torah that you learn all day at the Bet Midrash, that's her whole life. That's everything. That's what she works for. That's what she prays for. That's everything for her in her life. So she wants to share a little bit from that sweat that you have, from all that toil in Torah. For her, that's the honor. That's the honor she has. This is her achievement. So by letting her do this, although you may think it's disgusting, it's this, it's that, for her, this is how she honors the Torah. Because she knows that those feet are sweating. Why? Because they learn Torah all day. And therefore, listening to her is honoring her. And they actually obligated Rabbi Ishmael to continue to do this, to allow his mother to do this. Of course, if you have a filthy mind, you think filthy things, and we always have to put a disclosure because we are in the public, and unfortunately there are all types of crazy people in the world that have filthy thoughts. But this is the holiness of our sages and their mothers. This is the holiness of our sages and their mothers. So the Baal Mishneh Alachot, Rabbi Menashe Klein says, from here we learn that to listen to someone is to honor them. To listen to your mother-in-law who is asking you to stop helping her is honoring your mother-in-law. But even more so, he adds, this is also why the Gemara in Masechet Yevamot, page 62b, says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, why did he create a wife? Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu give Adam HaRishon a wife? To be Ezer Kenegdo, to be a help against him, to be someone that helps him. Rashi says on that Gemara, what is this Ezer? What is this help? To go take care of the things that need to be taken care of, like the children, things of the house, so he could go learn Torah. Whenever he's not working to provide for the family, he has all of the ability to go learn Torah. Why? Because his purpose in the world is to go learn as much Torah as possible. And if she is an Ezer Kenegdo, she's the best wife, she's going to do everything possible to make him have an easier time learning Torah. Why? Because that's her purpose in the world. But Rabbi Menashe Klein adds a last rebuke and says to the person that asked him this question, your purpose in the world, I'm sure you are making time to learn Torah. But perhaps you need a reminder, that it's not for you to go wash dishes and do laundries, but rather to go look for this gift that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you that would relieve you from those things and allow you an extra few moments, if not more, to go learn more Torah. Because that's the reason you were created in the world. You learning more Torah is why you're in this world. She cleaning the dishes and taking care of the house in order to help you learn more Torah is why she was created in the world. And he says, unfortunately, the hymen has been changed in this generation. The hymen, although it's the female body part, this is in essence a word that's used by the sages as this is something that's not supposed to change. And he says this changed in this generation where the men are looking for ways to be like women. To go do the laundry, to go to the store shopping for groceries, to go do this and clean the house, instead of looking for ways to steal a few moments here and there to go learn Torah, the guys are looking for ways to go be like a wife. And of course, vice versa, as you obviously see in the world today, that if you have a shiur Torah, many times there are women to men ratio of 3-1. You have 3 girls coming to the shiur for every guy that shows up, and sometimes worse. You want to have a shiur. If you say shiur Torah just for men, unless you're an extraordinarily popular speaker, maybe you're going to get a minyan, 2 minyanim. If you say women only shiur, even if no one in the world ever heard of you, you're going to get 50 to 100 women. Why? Upside down generation. Upside down generation. This is not to discount the value of the Torah learning of women or the need for it. But if you compare the responsibility of how much a man is supposed to learn Torah in the world versus his wife, there's no comparison. But what do we do that because of our many sins, Rabbi Menashe Klein says, that we live in an upside down generation where even the hymen changed. That the men are looking for ways to do laundry and the women are looking to go to do all the things that men do. Just like the punishment we got from Paro, he says. That he made the men do the women's jobs and the women do the men's jobs. So from here we see that yes, you are obligated to honor your mother-in-law, but if you merited to have a good mother-in-law, she's going to be the one that helps you learn more Torah. if you merited to have a good wife, she's going to help you go learn more Torah. If you want to be a good wife, you're going to encourage your husband to go learn more Torah. Why? Because you know, ultimately, it is going to be to all of your benefit. But unfortunately, sometimes people don't realize how much benefit they get because he's the one that's learning. How do I benefit? First and foremost, you should know, the more your husband learns Torah, the better husband he will become when he is next to you. The less Torah that your husband learns, the more he becomes like everybody else. Yeah, but if he's next to me, how is he like everybody else? Simple. What does everybody else do? They go, they hang out, they watch movies, they look at other girls, even if their wife is next to them. They eat as if they never eaten. They lust as if nothing is ever enough. They start comparing you to everything that's out there. They forget to say thank you. Simple. They live a life of a beast. Thanks to you. On the other hand, if your husband learns Torah, he may learn the shiur. He may learn the sfarim we brought to the shiur. He may learn many other things. And the next time he looks at you, he'll be reminded of the love and appreciation that he has for his mother, and thereby love you even more, thereby appreciate you even more, thereby respect you even more, and say thank you even more. A woman that helps her husband learn more Torah is a woman that's buying herself Gan Eden, cash, with her own efforts. Okay, so I'm going to have less time with him, but more him when I get his time. A woman that helps her husband learn more Torah is a woman that is literally getting herself Gan Eden. Because that's what the Gemara says. Why would a woman go to Gan Eden? For sending her husband to go learn Torah and waiting for him from when he comes back. When he comes back, how was his shiur? Was every day? I'm learning Chavuta with this guy for 10 years already. How was it today? Interested in what he's doing. Not just interested in telling him about what she did. Many women think that as soon as the husband comes home, the only thing he wants to hear about is what fight she had with her girlfriend or her mom or what. No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. You could say it at some point, maybe you need some guidance, but it's not necessarily the most ideal conversation to start off with. Perhaps if you took some interest in his learning, you'd see some benefit in it too. But many times when women don't care so much about what their husbands are learning, they don't value it. And they forget why their husbands even go to a kollel and why they go to yeshiva and why they even go to a shiur. They start thinking of it as if he's having his guy time. They're comparing it as if he's someone who goes to the movies, Hashem Yishmo. She forgot why she's even in this world. And therefore when our kids say that they want to go to a better yeshiva that may be in a different city, they don't want them to do it. Why? Because they think, listen, you're going to go away from me? They don't realize we came to this world to learn Torah. Not to be next to each other like little worms. We came to this world to learn Torah. The more Torah you learn in this world, the more Torah you produce in this world, the more benefit you get, not just in the other world, the next world, but the more benefit you get in this world. Because whatever time you do get from those precious people, those kids you have, that husband you have, that wife you have, although you have less time with them, the time you have with them is better time. There's no fights. There's no major disagreements. There is simply holiness. You don't see people arguing over money and materialism. More Torah. More things to talk about that actually have substance. Like, what's the weekly parasha? What could I learn to make myself better? How can we help this person? There's less complaining. There's more thinking. The more Torah, the more you think about HaKadosh Baruch Hu and how much you are grateful for everything He already gave you, even when what He gave you is a test. Just yesterday, Rabbi Ephraim told me when he ran into Rav Sharvit, our Rosh Kollel, in Eretz Yisrael, our Kollel, Baruch Hashem, Rav Sharvit looked exceptionally happy. He said, "Oh, how are everything good, Baruch Hashem?" He said, "Yeah, Baruch Hashem, fantastic, Baruch Hashem." "Oh, okay, Seder. You look a little happier today. Is there something special happening?" He goes, "No, Baruch Hashem, my wife, she's been working for this particular job for a long time, but they had some change in roles, and she had to take a specific test in order to get to the next level in this job, or else because her position is no longer a fit. So she went to take the test, and the woman that was behind the desk was some Arab that hates Jews, that works for the government. She looked at my religious wife, the Rabbanit, Rav Sharvit's wife. She looked at my Rabbanit's wife, took the paper for her, put a 0 on it, failed her for no reason. And as a result, she didn't get the job. The job they needed to pay the rent, to feed the kids, Baruch Hashem, to eat. Tzaddikim are also people. Rabbi Ephraim is like, Baruch Hashem, look at this. Look at what a tzaddik really is. Look what a Talmid Chacham really is. He's extra happy today because HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave his wife a test, gave him a test. What? His wife is unemployed. Baruch Hashem. The average person says, "Oh, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do this to me? Why me? Why this? I hate these." Okay, what do you think? HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't know? What do you think? HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't know? When a person has more Torah, he understands what the sages are teaching when they say you have to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu just as much for the bad as you do for the good. If you're a clever person, you realize that to send your kids to the best yeshiva is the best investment you're ever going to make. To send your husband to go learn Torah is the best investment you're ever going to make. To marry a religious person is the best investment you're ever going to make. To invest as much effort as you can in the Torah, whether you're male, female, child, adult, Jew or Gentile, to learn as much musar, as much as you possibly can to apply it to your life is the best investment of time and resources you possibly can. Why? That's what we came to the world. And that's what creates peace in the world. You have a world full of problems where in-laws are fighting their kids and their spouses. Kids are disrespecting their parents as if they're enemies. The only solution is the same solution that brought peace to the world at the time of Moshe Rabbeinu and thereafter. The solution is Torah. But Torah that's not just looking at everyone else and says, I know more than you, I am better than you. Rather, the Torah that is looking for ways to become better ourselves because we see our own deficiencies. And when we look at others, we look for ways not to hurt them. We look for ways to help them. And that's the reason why the Gaon of Vilna specifically warned his wife not to hurt his mother, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a special treatment for the orphan, for the convert, and for the widow. So much so that the Pasuk says, when it comes to these orphans, when it comes to these converts, when it comes to these widows, HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes extra care of them, that if you cause them to cry, you cause them anguish, even if it's slightest gesture, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu hears their cry, Shem Yishmael, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says he killed people with his own sword, not even send a malach. The Gaon of Vilna told his own mother, when you go up to the Bet Din of heaven, don't even bother telling them, about all of the great deeds and merits that you had. Simply tell them you were a widow for over 20 years. Because that suffering of being a widow for all those years, that's extremely valuable in Shemayim. And the pasuk in book of Exodus, Sefer Shmot, Parashat Shmot, chapter 22, verse 21, says, you shall not cause pain to any widow or orphan. Rashi says that this is in fact a prohibition applicable to all people, not to cause pain to any Jew. But the Torah specifies widows and orphans only because they're influentially weak and are most likely to be set upon. Rav Pinkus, Rav Shimshon Pinkus explains this by saying that most people are careful not to cause pain to offend or hurt important people. Their boss, some type of celebrity, an important rich person. As soon as you see them in an elevator, rich man, the boss of your company, or some celebrity, all of a sudden you become a little mouse. Oh, sorry, sir. Oh, sorry, you okay? What? Nothing. All of a sudden you're scared to hurt the dust on his jacket. People are so scared to hurt all these important people, these rich people. It's good to be careful. The only question Rav Pinkus asks is, how come we're not so careful with everybody else? How come you're not so careful hurting your wife, hurting your husband, hurting your kids, hurting some poor person in your community, hurting the widow, hurting the orphan, hurting the convert? How come you're only careful when it comes to hurting the multi-billionaire in the Kehillah? How come you're only careful not to disrespect the president of the community? How come you're only afraid to death of stepping on the shoe of somebody that is the Rosh of some, the Rabbi? Why aren't you careful when it's your colleague, your son, your daughter, your wife, your husband, your mother? Why aren't you as careful with regular people? Maybe not so important in your eyes. How come? Because the Torah obligation is on everybody. Even if you're going to rebuke, you look at Parashat Kedoshim last week, it says, "Ocheach tocheach et amitecha v'lo tisa alav chet." You must rebuke your brother, but do not come to the way of sin. Meaning, don't allow your rebuke to turn you into a sinner, where you focus so much on their wrongdoing that you forget that the whole point of the rebuke is to help them, not to mock them. The whole point of the rebuke is to try to help the people. The whole point of the protest against wicked people is to warn the public, not to become a class clown. The whole point of fulfilling the mitzvah of rebuke is to follow the will of Hashem, which means to help His people, help elevate His people, help elevate His Torah, not help elevate yourself. When a person is so careful of really important people, to such an extent that they forget about the small people, they're not doing the will of Hashem. If you give honor to your rabbi, but your wife you spit on, you're not Hashem's favorite apple. When you honor your husband, but you mock the entire community, you're not exactly Hashem's favorite. When you honor Hashem, but you despise His people, Hashem doesn't have that love for you, for those actions. Why? Because listening to the Torah means following it. Loving Hashem means loving His children. When a person is careful, he has to be careful with everybody. Sure, the Torah specifies the widow, the orphan, and the convert because they tend to be the most vulnerable. Says Rav Pinkus, those widows, those orphans, those converts, they typically are the most vulnerable and the most likely to be stepped on. Hopefully it's not your shoe that's stepping on them. In fact, if you want to be the one HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves, you're going to look to help them. You're going to look to help them. Not to mock them. Not to run away from them. Not to throw them out of a mikveh because of some takana that you don't even understand. The reality is, Rabotai Karim, when a person understands how HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at people that are vulnerable, if they have any connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that love that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has, that protection that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has for those vulnerable people, that in itself will create a motivation for you to help them. Gdolei Hador were extraordinarily careful from hurting every Jew, but even more so when it came to the widows, the orphans, the converts. Rav Chaim Ozer Grozinski, one of the Gdolei Hador, one time was sitting with a group of rabbis discussing important issues with the community in a restaurant. Out of nowhere, uninvited and unexpected, a woman runs into the place screaming and yelling and puts a paper in front of Rav Grozinski. You must sign this so I can start my tzedakah organization. And she talks to him with such disrespect. And when the other rabbis try to protect the Gdolei Hador's honor, how could you talk to the Gdolei Hador this way? She starts cursing him. Even more so, these other rabbis, oh, this is ridiculous. What are you doing? Rav Grozinski quiets all of them. He says, let her continue. She's a widow. She's a widow. It doesn't make her actions okay. I simply feel her pain. Rabbi Israel Misalant, when he was already too old to make his own matzahs as he did for many decades, and for the first time in his life, he wasn't able to be there. His Talmidim asked him what he should be careful of that would give him comfort that they're doing the right job. He said, just make sure and be especially careful not to distress the woman that's kneading the dough. Don't tell her she needs to work faster. Don't give her any advice. Just be patient. Whenever she finishes what she's doing, take it, be quiet, and let her do a job in peace. Why? She's a widow. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu warned us to be careful with widows, because they're already dealing with enough pain. When Rabbi Israel Misalant was once hosted by a rich man, they were about to sit for a meal, and they went for Netilat Yadayim, and Rabbi Israel Misalant took the natlan and just poured a little bit on his hands. The owner was very rich, had lots of water, had lots of everything. Tells the Rav, Kvod Rav, you don't have to be careful with how much water you spend. You could use as much water as you want. I hired an orphan that's going to collect the water and make sure that we have more than enough water. Meaning that there is a sgula, that someone that washes their hands for netilat dayim for bread, if they use a lot of water, it's a sgula for wealth. So this wealthy man says, I made sure that I'm going to have a lot of water. I even hired somebody, this young orphan girl, that she's going to go collect all the water that we need. Rabbi Yisrael Salan says, exactly that's the reason why I didn't use much water. Because I don't want to get rich on the back of the pain of a little orphan girl. When you understand the depth of each one of these stories, when you understand the magnitude of each one of these statements, you understand how all of it must be applied to our lives as soon as possible in order to make our lives as good as we would like for them to be. Your marriage is not going to get better by itself. Your relationship with your in-laws will not get better by itself. Your relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu will not get better by itself. Everything requires effort. There are certain people that wanted to run away from all efforts and simply do whatever their hearts desire. Perhaps we'll talk about it more next time. But their end wasn't well. Whereas the ones that followed the will of Hashem, which is to our interest, to our benefit, benefited in such a way that they enjoyed this world and the next. B'ezrat Hashem, this too will be another tool that we're all going to use to have the strength and the wherewithal and the desire to do the will of Hashem, because once and for all, it's become clear that His will is surely in our interest. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.